Well, Biff Tannen is picking on Eddie Munster again. And as far as the GOP is concerned, that is a harbinger of things to come for years to come. I know, I realize that in these conservative Ronin videos, there are a small number of recurring themes, and I know that it may seem repetitive for many of you, but there are points that need to be made, and they need to be hammered into the ground because so many so-called Republicans, or Republicans as I refer to them, simply refuse to learn them. Now, I'm not saying that repetition is going to succeed where no other method or tactic has either, or else they wouldn't be in this mess, this predicament, this position. But what else is there? I mean, if nothing else, it keeps the truth out there. Doing my little slice, my little piece on my little platform to get the truth. The truth is out there, and I'm going to contribute to it. Now, we all know Trump's going to lose. I mean, we've known it. Well, we and Never Trump have known it from the beginning. Trump is going to lose. Trump was not supposed to win. Trump was Hillary Clinton's tomato can, her palooka. He's in this race to guarantee her election. Whether he knows that or not, I don't know. I don't think he's smart enough to realize that. I think Bill Clinton got to him. Remember, they had that meeting about a month before Trump jumped into the GOP side of the presidential race in this cycle. And a month later, there he was, coming down those steps at Trump Tower. Living in America. So, Trump, his ego is his Achilles heel, and Bill Clinton knew exactly how to stroke it and poke it to get him to do what La Clinton Nostra wanted. Because La Clinton Nostra knew that only one candidate could possibly be beatable for Hillary Clinton, and that was Donald Trump. And so now we get to the end game, and Hillary Clinton's going to win. Currently, election projection has her winning by 7.5% in the popular vote. Oh God! I look at that and I just do a face palm, like, why? It's like the guy who gets talked into taking a spicy wings challenge with habanero extract, and and it's just the flames are just coming off of it, and he eats a wing anyway, and he's going, why? Ah! It didn't have to be this way, Trumplicans. It didn't have to be this way. Hillary Clinton, the worst candidate of the modern era in either party, major party, minor party, doesn't matter. The worst candidate of the modern era, maybe ever, is projected to win 351 electoral votes and become the next president of the United States. Even though I know how it happened and why it happened, it's breathtaking. As in like a punch in the gut. And Trump is making sure that he does as much damage as he possibly can to the GOP, to the party he hijacked and hostilely took over on his way down. After which he'll go back to his pretty nice life, as he himself phrased it a while back, and his own television network, which will gut Fox News. And for those of you out there who have looked for 20 years or more at Fox News Channel as our news channel, you know, the right's news channel, which it wasn't exactly true. They just, like their tagline said, fair and balanced. They gave the right their shot, their voice, their opportunity right alongside the left. You know, but for all of you out there who looked upon Fox as our media outlet, well, Trump's going to gut that too. I mean, why do you think that he went after Megyn Kelly? Oh, way over a year ago, after the first Republican debate in early August of last year. Because there were, well, number one, there were people like Sean Hannity ready to suck his you-know-what. But also because it provoked, it was the same tactic that he used on the Republican Party apparatus, leadership, whatever, the RNC itself. He accused them of being out to get him. He accused them of things that weren't true. And they backed off and they said, okay, we'll accommodate you. And then that turned, and of course, accommodation wasn't enough. And so eventually, with the isolated exceptions of a Neil Cavuto or a Megyn Kelly, Fox News Channel became Trump News Channel for all intents and purposes. So when all of this is over, is it any real big surprise that Trump is going to go off and start his own competitor for his own cable news channel, his own competitor to Fox News Channel, and take a lot of Fox News Channel's top stars with him? Like Sean Hannity. Remember a couple of years ago, as a matter of fact, when Megyn Kelly was given Sean Hannity's El Primo numero uno lead time slot and moved Hannity back an hour or two. And remember how that didn't sit well with Hannity at all? And look, and who was the biggest star that Donald Trump, on Fox News Channel, that Donald Trump cultivated? It was Sean Hannity, wasn't it? And he went to war with Megyn Kelly, the individual who replaced Hannity in that top spot. You think that any of this is accidental? And I'm not talking about in a conspiracy sense. I'm just talking about, hey, Donald Trump was a con man, and he was looking to insinuate himself, slither himself into where he wanted to go to get what he wanted. And so, I mean, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? He recognizes a schism, a split, and so he exploits it, just like he did to the larger Republican Party. I mean, you know, from a purely utilitarian standpoint of, wow, look, I mean, you got to admire how Trump did all these things, but you also have to lament how easy it was for him to do them. I mean, the state of supreme vulnerability from within the divisions that need never have existed within the right, within the Republican Party, within Fox News Channel, that allowed Donald Trump to completely destroy the right, completely divide, shatter, scatter, splatter, splinter. I could keep going if you like, but I think the point is made. Every branch of conservatism. I mean, everything from pitting Megyn Kelly against Sean Hannity and splitting Fox News Channel, all the way down to pitting Douglas V. Gibbs against yours truly, and splitting up Constitution Radio and politicalpistachio.com. Just utterly amazing how Donald Trump is from the top to the bottom, from the macrocosm to the microcosm. How vulnerable the right was to somebody like Donald Trump, and a New York liberal con man demagogue. And it's like the right, there have been those who have said that the right just doesn't want to win. Conservatives don't really want to win. They want to lose and have something to bitch about, rather than win and actually have to do the heavy lifting and, yes, compromising sometimes of actually governing the country. Governance. Running the United States of America. Actually trying to turn the country around. Reclaim, revive, resuscitate the old American Republic. Pulling on the oars, all in the same direction. All part of the team. We are stronger together than apart. If we don't all hang together, we shall surely all hang separately. Well, on November the 8th, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to see exactly what all hanging separately, metaphorically, for now, looks like. And a microcosm of that, a sneak preview, or a microcosmic sneak preview, is the latest dust-up between Trump and Paul Ryan. Now, of course, the House Speaker, who, by the way, has not withdrawn his endorsement of Trump, so it's not like he's betrayed Trump in any rational sense of that term. Now, Paul Ryan, after the first joint press appearance between Trump and Hillary Rodham Clinton, simply told his members, it's everybody for themselves. Do what you got to do. Distance yourself from Trump. Disavow Trump. Withdraw your endorsements, those of you who have issued them. Do what you got to do to survive. Do what you got to do to get reelected. And don't worry about the albatross, the orange albatross, the orange loathsome albatross, okay, at the top of the ticket. Yeah, just do what you got to do. And that middle ground position has continued to be the one that Paul Ryan has maintained. Paul Ryan is not campaigning with Donald Trump. Paul Ryan condemned Donald Trump's words in the Access Hollywood /Pussygate video. He hasn't withdrawn his actual endorsement, though. But otherwise, and of course, that was guaranteed to provoke the reaction, to do to Trump what you would imagine a man of Trump's narcissistic personality disorder, his stupendous ego. He's been blasting and pissing in the face of the House Speaker ever since. And over the weekend, he had another spasm of it. Susan Wright gives us a compilation at Red State this morning. Now, in setting up his continuing narrative of fail, taking a dive, in other words, Donald Trump decided to stick with what he knows, attacking Republicans, since he is a Democrat after all, and blaming everybody else for the fact that he's a lousy candidate who never had any shot at winning, and some would argue any intention of winning either. Here's what he said on Good Morning America, quote, "I don't want to be knocking Paul Ryan," Trump said in an interview that aired Tuesday on ABC's Good Morning America, and then he proceeded to knock Paul Ryan. It's that passive-aggressive tick again. "I think he could be more supportive to the Republican nominee." Notice he's talking about himself in the third person, which is also a trait of classic narcissistic personality disorder. We're doing well. I think we're going to win the election. Stop the tape. And you might be thinking I'm going to just start laughing my ass off, laughing hysterically, sticking in that 5 minutes of people laughing hysterically. No, I'm not going to do that. One, because I don't want to overuse certain cutaways, but also because, think about it, it's 3 weeks from today. The election is 3 weeks from today. And what do all losing candidates who know that they're losing and who know that they're going to lose tend to say publicly about their chances? They say, we're going to win this election. God, I remember 20 years ago, Bob Dole saying, we're going to win this election. He tried to get a comeback kid vibe going. He did make up some ground, but he was so far behind Bill Clinton in that race that there was no way he was ever. He would have needed another 6 months to try to have any chance of making up all that ground. He just simply didn't have the time. But I remember that even Bob Dole, who was behind double digits in the poll, said, we're going to come back, we're going to win, we're going to shock the world, we're going to, everybody thinks they're Harry Truman, 1948, I guess. But there's a very sound, logical, desperate, but logical reason, rational reason for that. And that's because in order to have any chance of having any chance at all of pulling off a shocking upset, you have to make sure that you maximize your own base turnout. I mean, if a candidate, just take Trump out of the equation. Any candidate who is 164 electoral votes behind in the projected electoral college, and is projected to lose by about 7.5 points in the popular vote, they're going to say that I think we're going to win, because they don't want their base supporters to give up and stay home. It's a lost cause. Hell with it. We're beaten. We're not going to win. So, you want to have the best chance that you possibly can, even if it is doomed and everybody knows it's doomed. A losing candidate 3 weeks out from an election is not going to admit it then. Even though he or she knows it, everybody knows it, because that's not how the game is played. So I'm not surprised that Trump is saying, we're doing well, I think we're going to win the election. Well, he's got to say that. He's got to say that. I mean, I'm sure Kellyanne Conway is telling, don't go out there. I mean, not that Trump would ever admit that he was losing. I don't think he needs Kellyanne Conway to tell him, don't go out and admit you're losing. He doesn't need Kellyanne Conway to tell him that, but that's what she would tell him, and for that reason. To have any chance at all of pulling off a stunning upset, you got to maximize base turnout, so you don't want to discourage that. So I get why he's saying that. It's delusional, but that's how the game is played. When asked if Trump thought Ryan wanted Trump to win, the GOP nominee said, maybe not, because maybe he wants to run in 4 years and maybe he doesn't know how to win. Like Trump does? Maybe he just doesn't know how to win. Well, takes one to know one. No. Who knows what Ryan is planning on doing in 4 years? I mean, he didn't run this time, so I mean, he's got enough of Trump's stink on him as it is, but at least he wasn't a candidate this time, so he doesn't have that problem going against him, as we're going to discuss in the next segment. But could Ryan be more supportive of Trump? Well, yeah, he could, but why would he? I mean, why would he? Seriously. I mean, when you stop and think about it, now, Trump is suggesting Paul Ryan wants him to lose. Actually, the reality is far simpler than that. And it's one that Trump would understand if he wasn't such a pathologically self-centered solipsist. Good old all-American self-interest. Trump wants to win, theoretically, but he's going to lose, and badly. Ryan wants his caucus to remain in majority control of the House. Those two goals are fundamentally incompatible because Trump is going to get electorally stomped, taking the GOP brand down with him, which he's already pretty much done anyway. Ryan recognizes it and is attempting to shepherd his members clear of the blast zone. I mean, if in addition, if for no other reason than we're really going to need to be able to block, to check President Hillary. Only a Republican Congress can do that, or at the very least a Republican House. According to election projection, Republicans are going to lose the Senate. It's back to a 51-49 Democrat Senate projected, and going to lose about 13 seats in the House, but still maintain the 234-201 majority. So Ryan is trying to preserve a check on the Hillary Clinton presidency that Donald Trump and Trumplicans made inevitable 5 months ago. Now, Trump refuses to recognize this reality and is blaming Ryan and the GOP for the disloyalty, as though, separation of powers, they don't have to be, they're not obligated to be loyal to Trump. Usually, down ballot candidates are loyal to the party nominee because the party nominee is one of them is actually a member of that party and is not trying to sabotage and destroy it. But Trump refuses to recognize, publicly anyway, the reality that he's going to get destroyed and is blaming Ryan and the GOP for the disloyalty of attempting to escape the blast zone, as though staying and being destroyed along with him would change the outcome of his own race, which it wouldn't. But Donald Trump is all about attacking Republicans, just like any other Democrat. There's vengefulness in numbers and all of that. Now, see, the thing you have to remember is if Trump were actually an actual Republican, and not a Democrat saboteur, he'd be singing a different tune because he would give a damn about the party that he had hijacked, in addition to just himself, which, of course, is not and will never be true. So for all of those who have been following the ongoing battle of personalities between the petulant Trump and the House Speaker, Paul Ryan, it would appear that Ryan and other party officials have bent over backwards to be accommodating to the nominee. And that's definitely true. And it's definitely foolish. They should have dumped Trump at the Trump bench and put anybody in there in his place. And if Trumplicans wanted to riot and if they wanted to whine and bitch and moan and complain, well, screw them. Do you think that they're going to stay with the Republican Party? Do you? Because if you do, you're an idiot and you're not paying attention. Hence the Humpty Dumpty reference in the title of this video. The next segment, we're going to get into that in the bigger picture. Trump is blaming Ryan and other GOP officials now for not dragging him over the finish line, as though they could. For all his bluster, he knows this campaign is lost. On Sunday, Trump released a barrage of tweets, as is his wont, that vaguely mentioned his Democrat opponent but focused mainly on insulting Paul Ryan, which has been the pattern throughout this campaign. I mean, it's very reasonable to ask, why is Donald Trump running against Hillary Clinton. Throughout this entire campaign, has there been any discussion? Has there been any debate between these two candidates? I don't mean just face to face. I mean just in back and forth campaign rhetoric, in rallies and interviews and what have you. What issue has been discussed in this campaign? Name one. You haven't heard much about immigration in the past 2 months, have you? Because Donald Trump sold out and embraced amnesty back in August. Which, as a side note, isn't it interesting that we have not heard hide nor hair of Ann Coulter for the past 2 months, have we? I mean, Ann Coulter was out there front and center. She was ready to have Donald Trump's baby, if she weren't past menopause anyway. I mean, this was the woman who said that she would support Trump personally performing abortions in the Oval Office itself if he meant, building Trump wall and deporting illegal aliens and so forth. Where's Ann Coulter been ever since he sold out on immigration? Interesting, excruciatingly conspicuous absence, isn't it? Oh boy, oh man. Fascinating, as Mr. Spock would say. So, like I say, yes, on Sunday, 48 hours ago, Trump released a barrage of tweets that vaguely mentioned his Democrat opponent, but focused mainly on insulting Paul Ryan. His strategy, quote unquote, at this point seems to be to convince his supporters that when he loses, it's not because he faced a more disciplined professional campaign machine. It's not because he was taking a dive deliberately to get Hillary Clinton elected. And it's not because he's a fool and a buffoon who doesn't know what the hell he's doing, which is exactly what Trumplicans wanted. They wanted an outsider. Well, they can't, the Washington cartel couldn't do any worse. Want to bet? No, it's because he was the heroic man alone fighting against the entire U.S. governmental system. And shut up. Oh. Self-flattering nonsense. Here was one of his tweets. The Democrats have a corrupt political machine pushing crooked Hillary Clinton. Yeah, I bet he wishes he had one. We have Paul Ryan always fighting the Republican nominee. Not really. He's kissed your ass for 2 months. Almost 2 months. And he still hasn't, Ryan still is not withdrawn his endorsement. I mean, that's kind of like saying, it's like when your wife is having her period and she won't have sex with you, but she'll, how do I put this? She'll give you the digital delight, so to speak. You're having your happy ending. It's just not as happy as it could have been. I wouldn't agree with Trump's whining here if Ryan had withdrawn his endorsement, but if Ryan had officially said, I no longer support the nominee of the Republican Party, I no longer support Donald Trump, and declared his opposition, you could see that, well, yeah, Ryan did renege, he did pull back his endorsement, so, at least you could say, well, substantively, structurally, you could say that if you support Donald Trump, you could say he's justified in whining about it. But that's not the case. Ryan has not withdrawn his endorsement. His support is no longer as slavish as it once was, and it's never been as slavish as Trump was demanding. But there's a very sound reason for that, as we've already discussed. Paul Ryan wants to hold on to the big gavel. He doesn't want to lose Republican control of the House, because that probably will be the only check on President Hillary Clinton going forward. Here's another Trump tweet. Paul Ryan, a man who doesn't know how to win, including failed run 4 years ago, must start focusing on the budget, military, vets, all the things that Donald Trump, are all the things on which Donald Trump has not been focusing in this campaign. I mean, first of all, Paul Ryan was the vice presidential candidate. He was not the top of the ticket. So Ryan was on a losing ticket 4 years ago, but he didn't head that ticket. He didn't lose. Mitt Romney did. I mean, remember this after Trump loses. As far as that's concerned, you know who should be having his toes curl at this tweet? Mike Cuck Pence. Because Cuck Pence is going to be in the exact same, he is in the exact same position that Paul Ryan was 4 years ago, aside from the fact that Paul Ryan's running mate was a decent, good, kind man and was actually a Republican and was actually conservative-ish, if not a full-blown, pure strain conservative. And Pence, he has, in essence, he's got Bill Clinton for his running mate. So it's not a question of Paul Ryan not knowing how to win. Paul Ryan does know how to win. That's why he's backing away from Trump. He knows how to win. In fact, what Trump is saying here is Paul Ryan doesn't know how to get me elected, which is in essence to say that Trump doesn't know how to get elected. So he's demanding everybody else come to his rescue. And they're not doing so because they wouldn't be able to do it. All they would do is take themselves down with him. And they're not willing to do that. And that's called, again, self-interest. But do you think, think about this for a minute. Paul Ryan is the Speaker of the House of Representatives, right? It's his job, legislatively, to focus on the budget, military, vets, etc. When has Donald Trump been focusing on any of these things? And I'm only talking about in this context just the general campaign. The past 3 months, when has Trump focused on any actual issue? I mean, think about it. What are his dominant themes been since back in July? Fighting with Republicans, the feud with the Khan family, crooked Hillary, and then never talking about her scandals until it's way too late. Selling out on amnesty. Selling out on his core issue, illegal immigration, selling out on that, embracing amnesty, embarrassing himself down in Mexico City with President Prieto. What else? Twitter rants about various and sundry perceived personal slights. And then, of course, his terrible first debate performance. And then his terrible second debate performance, terrible in a different way, for different reasons. And then Pussygate. I mean, where Donald Trump has not been talking about the budget in this campaign. He's not been talking about the military. He's not been talking about veterans. He's not been talking about any of these things. So for him to point the finger at Paul Ryan and accuse him of not focusing on these things, it's psychological projection, which is another, again, a psychological trait of liberal, left-wing nut Democrats. Now let's face it, this is going to make for great reality TV. Trump has stirred up the festering swamp and released the alt-right dregs who idolize him. He has, they feel, given them legitimacy where polite society had forced them to remain in the shadows, wallowing in their own stink for so long. Now that they're out in the open, he is their Pied Piper, and he has a ready-made audience for his next TV venture. Meanwhile, Paul Ryan and the GOP are not his opponents, although God knows they should be. But after his loss, when Trump slides right back to the Democrat Party, nobody should be shocked. And those who have paid attention won't be. And nobody should be shocked when he takes a large chunk of what had been the Republican base back to the Democrat Party with him. I'm talking about a lot of ex-Tea Partiers. That's right, you heard me. Yeah, that's right, I said it. Your Mark Levin moment of the day. And the final tweet. Wow, interview released by WikiLeaks shows quid pro quo and crooked Hillary email probe. Such a dishonest person. And Paul Ryan does zilch. What is Paul Ryan supposed to do about Emailgate? I mean, it's not like there haven't been congressional panels, congressional committees doing just that. Well, what do you that was one of the things that was thrown on Trey Gowdy's plate, wasn't it? I seem to recall that it was. Well, what are they supposed to do? I mean, I've seen Andy McCarthy, who is a moderate Trumplican, talking about how Hillary Clinton should be impeached, and here's how Congress can do it. Hillary Clinton's not holding a federal office right now. She will be come January 20th, but you can't preemptively impeach somebody if they're not in federal office. There's nothing to impeach. I mean, and what will be the point? Because the Republicans are not going to control the Senate, at least not for another couple of years. So, yes. Flaggle claggle, folks. This is just such a mess. I mean, there's nothing that Paul Ryan can do about it. I mean, Congress is investigating. That's all Congress can do. Right now, currently, as of this moment, Hillary Clinton is beyond the reach of Congress. She's not holding a federal office currently. She will be very shortly again. But then, you know, where has been Donald Trump's attack upon Hillary Clinton over any of her scandal? I mean, that's another bone of contention here. See my review of the first joint press appearance, when Donald Trump did not talk about any of Hillary Clinton's scandals. And then in the second joint press appearance, what did he talk about? On what did he obsess and focus? All of Bill Clinton's scandals, which turned out to be duplicates of his own. But he hasn't been talking about Emailgate. He hasn't been talking about the Clinton Foundation. All he's done in that regard is come up with a not particularly clever nickname. Crooked Hillary. Well, find something alliterative at least, you know? I mean, and one that doesn't boomerang back upon himself. Ever heard of the Trump Foundation? I think you have. I mean, the bottom line here is that Trump was never a Republican, certainly not a conservative, hence the reason he cannot keep focused on his target and why he has already lost this election months and months ago. But Myra Adams at National Review this morning coined a term that we're going to be hearing a lot about over the next 4 years. And that is a two-word phrase. The Trump test. And the Trump test, as Myra Adams points out, will haunt the GOP in 2020 and every step of the way. I mean, this is in line with what I've been saying about how Trump has left his stink, his orange feces all over the Republican Party. He has corrupted the vast majority of the Republican Party. He has divided, he has shattered, scattered, splattered, fractured the Republican Party. And, you know, it would be nice to believe that this was just the normal kind of frictions, and I mean, even the closest knit of families have, sometimes have differences and get into fights, arguments. I mean, look at the Seattle Seahawks sideline this past Sunday. Not even 48 hours ago, after Richard Sherman appeared to give up the first third quarter touchdown to Julio Jones. And then Sherman was just absolutely berserk because there had been miscommunication, and it hadn't been communicated to him, in other words, that they were playing a zone scheme on that play, and he didn't get that memo, or wasn't communicated to him, or maybe he wasn't listening. I don't know. But he thought he was playing man coverage, so he took the underneath route, and Julio Jones ran right past him, wide open, down the left sideline, touchdown. And he was embarrassed, and he felt like his teammates had let him down. They hadn't communicated that to him, and then they just jump right back. Oh no, you didn't. This was communicated. We talked about it before the game. You blew it. You blew the coverage. It's on you. Own it, because accountability is very important in life. And the fact that we got Trump and Hillary as the major party presidential candidates indicates that accountability is a quaint anachronism anymore. But on the Seattle Seahawks defense and the Legion of Boom, it still exists and is alive and well. And so, Sherm was just yelling and screaming at everybody. Teammates, coaches, threw his helmet down. And, the point, and of course that's a great image to send to the country. He was already predisposed to not liking the Seahawks and not liking Richard Sherman, so congratulations, Sherm. But the point is, even the closest knit of families, brotherhoods, organizations, are going to have their frictions and their disputes, and but usually it's the kind of thing that is encapsulated in the old adage that, I think Victor Creed said it in X-Men Origins Wolverine to Logan, and he said, "Nobody kills you but me." Brothers can pound on each other, but if anybody from the outside threatens bodily harm, they unite. Back to back! So, but the divisions that Trump has hammered into the Republican Party, the shatter, scatter, splatter, fracture, are way more than that. He has permanently divided this party. If anybody thinks, and I would love to believe, that after this election, the right, just out of self-preservation, could come back together and present a united front in opposition to President Hillary Clinton. Trumplicans, conservatives, confess their sins, admit they were wrong, that they created this disaster, come back, we forgive them, we remake, renewed common cause, close ranks, re-ally ourselves in the old Reagan coalition, and come back hugely in the 2018 midterms, and then take back the White House in 2020. I would love to believe that's going to be the case. I don't think it is. I think these splits are permanent. Now, maybe they were always there. I mean, there are those who said for years that the Reagan coalition wasn't a natural fit because the three legs of the stool, the fiscal, budget balancing, and supply side economics wing, and then the social issues, pro-life and now pro-traditional marriage, pro-gender reality, I guess you lack a better term, and then the national defense, peace through strength wing or leg of that metaphorical stool. And the three basic wings didn't necessarily all like each other, but you've heard for years that canard that well, I'm socially liberal but I'm fiscally conservative, which actually doesn't, they don't go together. If you're socially conservative, you can't be fiscally, or if you're socially liberal, you can't be fiscally conservative, because social liberalism leads to more of the welfare state. It grows the welfare state. It can't do anything else because it breeds and exacerbates social pathologies, to which the solution is always more welfare or welfare state interventions and so forth. So this wasn't these three, this tripod, this triad, wasn't a natural fit. But it stuck together because we had enough things in common, and they were important enough that we all, stayed together. And a big part of that was the Cold War. Well, the Cold War ended a generation ago, and so now, and then of course the so-called neocons, took the heat, which was really unjustified, but for the supposed failure, which it didn't fail, it was just longer, more difficult than anybody suspected it would be, and sometimes that happens in life, of the war in Iraq. And so, in other words, it's been a long time coming, but now Trump has just taken, isn't that the metaphor that Trump supporters used? Trump is just going to take a sledgehammer to all of it. He's going to burn it all down. He's going to destroy it, tear it all down. It was like, that's a good thing. Well, if you're a Democrat, it's a good thing. If you're actually a Republican, no, it's not a good thing. But those divisions were there, and those divisions have become more important than the party itself. Division has become more important to too many Republicans than unity, even against President Hillary Rodham Clinton. That's why I say the stopping Hillary was never the point of Trump mania. Never. It was burning down the Republican Party. And that is a Democrat objective, not a conservative one. And look where Ace of Spades is going. He said, I'm going back to the Democrats. Well, then that's where your natural home has been all along, isn't it? So, there's not going to be any big group hug after this election. There's not going to be any coming together in a common cause to stop crooked Hillary or whatever. No, the GOP civil war will continue. It will rage on while the Democrats just run the country, more or less. Now, how is it going to manifest itself? Well, Republican candidates going forward will be asked, and this is it's very easy to forecast, very easy to predict, very easy to see coming. Republican candidates will be asked forevermore about their reactions to Trump. Where were you on Trump? What was your position on Trump? Did you support Trump? Did you not support Trump? Were you there really isn't any such thing, but reluctant Trump supporter? In other words, a Republican, a cuckservative? Or were you a full-blown Trumplican? A full-blown Kool-Aid drinking, orange-hued zombie? Now, as a formerly long-time loyal Republican, now I'm a conservative independent, and will remain that way for the rest of my life, for the reasons I just laid out. My chronic fear is that George W. Bush will be the last Republican president. Fear expressed earlier this year by W. himself. This fear predates Donald Trump's rise to the GOP nomination. It is a concern that Myra Adams has expressed more than once over the past 4 years. But Trump's inevitable election day defeat, coupled with a raging Republican civil war, has strengthened the odds of a White House under permanent Democrat control. Think about that. Permanent Democrat control. Now, since before the Civil War, the longest the Democrats have controlled the White House is 5 consecutive terms. FDR's 4, and then Harry Truman. 5 consecutive terms. The longest the Republicans had it was 3, Reagan, and then Bush 41. But that's, for all intents and purposes, that's at least indefinite Democrat control of the White House. Which is odd, given that I thought the whole point was to get the White House back in order to start the long, laborious process of reclaiming the Republic or resurrecting it. Now, at this writing, the time of this video, no one knows if Trump will disengage from active Republican politics after November. I don't think he will. He'll stay involved. He might not run again in 2020. I don't know. Maybe he will. He's got the ego to just keep running, keep the Republican Party screwed up. But his Trump News Network or Trump News Channel or whatever is perhaps that'll keep the pot roiling. That'll keep the GOP civil war raging. That'll be another factor in preventing any right-wing reconciliation. But it doesn't really matter because Trump's short-term legacy will be what we'll call the Trump test. Did you support Trump? Did you campaign with or for Trump? Did you denounce any of Trump's statements or policy stances? Which ones? How? When? And did you vote for Trump? See what I mean about this? The stench and the stain, the disgrace of Donald Trump, his orange feces smeared all over other Republicans and their legacies. Now, if you're a candidate for the 2020 GOP nomination, as Trump accused Paul Ryan of plotting, like it's a plot if anybody else does it, but what Donald Trump has done over the past 16 months isn't a plot. If you're a candidate for the 2020 GOP nomination, you're going to have to address these toxic questions. And your answers will inevitably enrage at least one sizable group of voters. Some of the 2020 contenders will have better answers than others, but all will be tainted by their responses to Trump because of the passion he stirs in both his supporters and his detractors. And I haven't been shy. I've been open about the fact that I just, anybody who could support Donald Trump, I just don't take seriously as a conservative, and I don't trust their judgment. And frankly, I've lost all respect for it. Especially for me, Pussygate, that's why Pussygate is so emblematic, because it is, again, it's exactly what Bill Clinton did. It's exactly the kind of thing on which Trump is attacking Bill Clinton and trying to make it somehow a relevant campaign issue in 2016, when he did the exact same thing himself. He double dated with Bill Clinton, for crying out loud. You've seen the pictures. So, and anybody who made an excuse, anybody who defended in the slightest Donald Trump on Pussygate, they're dead to me. I don't trust them. I don't respect them. They may as well become Democrats, because I can't picture anybody but a Democrat being willing to sell out to that degree of hypocrisy. So, I mean, there may be some people who come back over. They would be conservatives, not the Trumplicans. They're sold out for good. But the conservatives might just try to pretend that their support of Trump never happened and Trump never existed, and try to revive a conservative viewpoint or an image for themselves. And I'm not having it. I'm not buying it. I don't trust it. I don't think it's real. And in part, yes, I'm talking about Douglas V. Gibbs, who defended Trump on Pussygate. Parroted the oh, it's just locker room talk. All guys say that. So I don't trust them. They have forfeited that trust. They have forfeited any credibility they ever once had as conservatives. They're not conservatives. Douglas V. Gibbs is not a constitutional originalist. He has sold out to the left by defending the Clintonoid behavior of Donald J. Trump. So, yeah, I mean, it's not a question of passion. It's a question of credibility, substance. I mean, when the Republican candidate, Republican in quotes, although maybe it's not in quotes anymore, has a scandal that's indistinguishable from Bill Clinton's scandals, and you've been attacking the Clintons over the exact same thing for years, and including in this campaign, and then your own candidate does it and you defend him, then, screw you. On one side are Trump loyalists infuriated that party leaders, as we've been talking about with Paul Ryan, are not fully funding, campaigning with, or standing by their man. In other words, like I say, vengeance in numbers. Everybody's got to go down with the nominee, right? No, they don't. After Trump's inevitable loss in November, these loyalists, many of them grassroots extremists who helped Trump steal the nomination and hijack the party, are poised to blame the GOP high command. Well, they always do that. That's reflexive. They've been doing that for years. GOP establishment, which is in line with Trump. So, like I say, Trumplicans, you and the GOP establishment are on the exact same side. How does it feel? You can't blame them. You could flip around that analogy I used earlier of you're angry with the GOP high command because they wanked Trump instead of blowing him. I mean, is that really your complaint? Because that pretty much sums it up. Like that would have made any difference? Accusing Republican leaders of disloyalty and threatening to leave the party. Well, don't let the door hit your fat asses on the way out. Disloyalty. They don't have to be loyal. Separation of powers. Remember that concept? I mean, good Lord, do you think there isn't precedent for this? How many times over the course of just in the modern era, how many times has a party's presidential nominee gone down to huge landslide defeat? And do all the congressional, the down ballot candidates embrace their nominee and ride the nuke like straight to perdition like at the end of Dr. Strangelove? No! They run their own races. They have their own races to win. Self-interest. There's no loyalty obligation. I mean, the irony of this disloyalty BS. I mean, Donald Trump still, to this day, has never shown any loyalty to the party he hostilely took over. He has never shown any loyalty to the Republican Party to the GOP, ever. But now he's demanding loyalty to him? Screw him. He's destroyed this party. What loyalty has he earned from anybody? And on the other side are true conservatives who've never bent the knee to Trump, who always, from day one, knew what Donald Trump was and is, knew what he represented and represents, knew what he was trying to do to the right, to the Republican Party, knew that he was trying to get Hillary Clinton elected president, and she couldn't get elected president any other way. In other words, we're right and you people were wrong, you Trump supporters, whether Trump-looking or conservative. And yeah, we're already shouting, "We told you so," when Trump loses. And yeah, we are armed with plans to reform the primary system that allowed Trump to hijack the party. I mean, we've made fun of the Democrat super duper delegate apparatus for years, and yeah, it's not a completely defensible thing, because the super duper delegate concept guarantees that whoever the party bosses want to be the nominee, that it precludes insurgent campaigns. It minimizes the grassroots influence on the party. Yeah, it absolutely does. How else could Hillary Clinton have gotten the Democrat nomination if not for these super duper delegates? I mean, apart from the super duper delegates, Hillary was in neck and neck with somebody as weak and wacky as Bernie bleeping Sanders. So yeah, it doesn't have a whole lot to be said for it. But I tell you what, Trump mania certainly points out the upside. I mean, Trump mania doesn't really say much for grassroots influence on the party. I mean, this is a perfect and legitimate example of the lesser of two evils. Now, you may get frustrated with the party leadership. You may get frustrated with, oh, they keep sticking us with with McCain's and with Romney's and with Bush's, and yeah, you may that may be a legitimate gripe. But this, Trump mania is the opposite end of time's rainbow. That's the opposite extreme. And Donald Trump is doing more damage to the Republican Party than McCain or House Bush or Mitt Romney ever dreamed of. It's that bad. I mean, the establishment candidate getting nominated, being inserted by the leadership, and understand that the GOP primary rules and the system are set up to be rigged, if you will, in favor of the front runner. Not necessarily a particular candidate, but the front runner. And it's been that way for years. Always been that way. How else do you think the establishment candidates keep getting nominated? Of course, that's one of the reasons. The other reason is that conservative challengers, there's never just one conservative challenger. There's a bazillion of them, and they all beat each other to death. And in the meantime, the establishment candidate just cruises unchallenged to the nomination. It just so happens that Donald Trump hijacked the system, made himself the front runner, and just took advantage of the existing rigged apparatus. But he did so at the instigation of what? The grassroots. And that brings me back to the fact that the Founding Fathers didn't trust the lumpen proletariat any more than they trusted any other faction of society. They wanted to limit power. They wanted to minimize the amount of power that any one group could amass. I mean, the people were, they were represented through the House of Representatives. The states were represented through the Senate. And the president was elected by the people via the states. Remember, I mean, the founding fathers, they're not perfect, and there's no such thing as a perfect system, but there was genius in those men. Absolute genius. They didn't trust the people. They didn't trust democracy. Trump mania is all about people power, populism. The founding fathers recognized how dangerous to a constitutional republic populism really is. And they didn't trust it. They didn't trust democracy. Because they knew that the democracies don't last, historically have never lasted much longer than 2 centuries. Because they betray and murder themselves. They commit, and effectively commit political suicide. As soon as people realize through mob rule, through democracy, that they can vote themselves bread and circuses and goodies from the public treasury, then it just. Oh, by the way, the national debt is approaching $20 trillion. Have a nice day. Populism, I don't trust populism. I have never trusted populism. Historically, populism has been dangerous. Populism never leads to a good end. Why? Because the people don't know what they're doing. The people are no great repository of wisdom. Tyranny of the majority is just as dangerous as tyranny of the minority. In fact, arguably, it's more dangerous because it has the veneer of legitimacy, democratic legitimacy, which just makes it all the more dangerous. Because, again, the people have no more inherent wisdom than the elites do. And Trump mania is the bleeping proof. Now, all indications are that the war between these 2 factions for control of the GOP will only get bloodier between now and 2020. All the king's horses and all the king's men could not put the Humpty Dumpty GOP back together again. It almost makes you pine for those polite pre-Trump days when the only intra-party conflict was between the let's just say grassroots and the establishment wings of the GOP. But then you remember it was that conflict that spawned this one by giving rise to a fractured primary field that a hostile interloper could exploit. Competing against 16 other candidates, Trump seized the party by the throat through a combination of bombastic showmanship and voter frustration, in other words, him being himself and the Tea Party being itself, gaining momentum after attracting relatively small percentages of fed-up primary voters desperate to try something radically outside the box. And now you see why the box exists in the first place. So history will note that Trump's movement eventually demolished all the conservative and establishment candidates and blurred the lines between the party's 2 traditional factions. But not forever. When Trump finishes with the party, the traditional factions will reemerge even more divided by the fallout from his loss, the ensuing arguments over his legacy, and fights arising from the 2020 presidential candidates' answers to the Trump test. Parenthetically, again, from a historical perspective, are you beginning to see why Abraham Lincoln was so eager to just let bygones be bygones after the Civil War, forget the whole thing and move forward? Remember his second inaugural address? With malice toward none, we proceed forward to, well, it's not verbatim, but to bind the nation's wounds. He didn't want there to be years of recriminations and conflict, even if it wasn't a shooting conflict. He wanted to put the country back together again. And that was more important to him than years of continued bickering and recriminations over who was at fault and revenge and all the things that would keep the country divided. And that was back in the days when, the United States was not the United States. The United States was not America! Bleep, yeah! It wasn't quite to that point yet. And continued divisions would make the United States vulnerable for perhaps a renewed European predation in Britain or France or, who knows what European power might see us as a right target again, that kind of thing. So he recognized the wisdom of just, okay, Civil War's over. It wasn't realistic, but you can see why he wanted to do that. You can see why he wanted to just put everything behind us, forget the disputes, forget the recriminations. Let's just come together. We are strong together than apart, and if we don't all hang together, we don't all hang together, we shall surely all hang separately. Now, Democrats, here we go. Democrats, on the other hand, will not be divided in their opinion of Trump's historical meaning. He is their masterpiece. Donald Trump was the Democrats' secret weapon, and they used him, deployed him to devastating effect, and he will remain the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, they're already licking their chops in anticipation of the opportunity to replace. What have I been saying? That Trump will be the 21st century answer to Herbert Hoover. The Democrats will hang Trump around the GOP for decades to come. The party of Trump. Like in the 20th century, for the third of a century that the Republicans were functionally locked out of the White House. I don't really count Dwight Eisenhower. The GOP was the party of Herbert Hoover, the party of depression, the party of, and that's what it's going to be for decades to come with Trump. The GOP will be the party of Trump. The GOP, everything the left's ever said about the GOP, racist, sexist, homophobe, bigot, cares only about the wealthy, blah, blah, blah. Well, they nominated Trump. That proves it all. And if you're a Republican, then you have an orange hue. It doesn't matter whether you supported Trump, whether you didn't support Trump, especially if you didn't support Trump. But it doesn't matter if you're a never Trumper. If you're a Republican, you are Trump. That's what it's going to be for years and years to come. Decades. A generation at least. So they're licking their chops in anticipation of the opportunity to replace Herbert Hoover, or more recently George W. Bush, with Trump as the Republican boogeyman of choice in voters' minds. And it'll work. Because casual voters, low information voters, don't really pay attention to the details. Instead of the tired mantra about how Bush wrecked the economy, it was the Democrats who wrecked it and blamed it on Bush. But again, those pesky details that Trump doesn't get into either. They'll be able to hang Trump around the necks of GOP candidates nationwide for cycle after cycle after cycle after cycle after cycle. So, yes, there is reason to fear that we've seen the last Republican president. Because we pretty much have, or at least I cannot imagine the circumstances under which the Republicans will ever get back into the White House again. unless Trumplicans confess their sins, admit they were wrong, and come home and reform the Reagan coalition. In fact, it took Ronald Reagan to fully restore the Republican Party. But I wonder if even the Gipper himself could repeat that accomplishment this time.